However, now going back to the war in 48, there is a special problem with the war of Hakamas HaMedina. And not because of the issue of Milchemes Mitzvah, Milchemes Arishus. But there's another issue entirely. And that is the issue of Shlo Yalu B'Chayma. There's a very famous Gemara in Ksubis. The Gemara says in Ksubis that Rav Zera wanted to go from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. And he was trying to avoid Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda held that was forbidden to go up from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara says in Ksubis, why? Because Rabbi Yehuda darshan the pasuk, Bavela yuvau v'shama yiyu ad yom pakti yosam num Hashem. Because the Rebbe Shalom said that they should stay in Bavel. And therefore, they were supposed to remain in Bavel, you weren't allowed to leave. So the Gemara says, what did Rav Zera hold? Rabbi Yehuda L'chair was right. Zok the Gemara, hahu b'klei shares ksiv. Rav Zera held that pasuk wasn't referring to people, it was referring to the klei shares. But people were allowed to go back to Eretz Yisrael. Frak the Gemara, so what did Rabbi Yehuda hold? Rabbi Yehuda ksiv kra'achriti. Kra'achrina. Rabbi Yehuda held that there was another pasuk, a pasuk in Shir HaShirim. Hishbati eschem b'nois Yerushalayim. That Shlomo HaMelech writes that I made b'nois Yerushalayim swear, im ta'iru v'im ta'iru es ha'ava ad shetechpatz. Which means, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that the Rebbeinu Shalom made Klal Yisrael swear that they shouldn't go back until the Rebbeinu Shalom wants them back in Eretz Yisrael. Zoch the Gemara, what does Rav Zera do with that pasuk? Zoch the Gemara, Rav Zera holds that means Shalo Yalu B'Chayma. That merely means that Klal Yisrael shouldn't go B'Chayma, as Rashi teaches B'Yad Chazaka. That Klal Yisrael shouldn't go up and recapture Eretz Yisrael with force. That's what the Shvuah meant. But for an individual to go up personally to Eretz Yisrael, that was not a violation of the Shvuah. So the Gemara read the Chaduch, and the Gemara comes out that there were actually 3 Shvuahs. A, Shalo Yalu B'Chayma. B, Shalo Yimrudu B'Umas Ha'olam, that Klal Yisrael should not rebel against the nations of the world. And Gimel, Shalo Yishtabdu Behen B'Yesimidai, a Shvuah on the Goyim, that they should not torture the Yidden unnecessarily. They can be rule over them, but they shouldn't enslave them. This Gemara, Rabbi Sai, is the halachic and philosophical basis and underpinnings of the shittas of those Yidden that hold that the Hakamas HaMedina is Shaloi Al Pi Din. And because he was perhaps the most articulate and the most well-learned of all of these proponents, we will quote tonight from the Shita of the Satmar Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Now some of you may be vehemently opposed to the Shita of the Satmar Rebbe. But one thing we all must bear in mind, that the Satmar Rebbe was a Goyin and a Tzadik and an Ish Kodesh, and a Meshunetik Talmud Chacham to boot. If you're interested on your own, you can go through the entire kuntrus, which is 176 pages long, called Maimer Sholosh Shvuos. But the Satmar Rebbe, based on this Gemara, and as I said, against the kuntrus holds that state in this Gemara, Shalo Yalu B'Chayma, that there was a Shvuah on Klal Yisrael that they should not go en masse with force and recapture Eretz Yisrael until the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to be goyal them. And just to quote a few of the things that he says, he brings a Ramban, that the Ramban says that the promise that the Rebbeinu Shalom made with Klal Yisrael, that they would never be wiped out, is only in effect when there are Yidden throughout the entire world. B'chol kanfei haaretz. But if Yidden would theoretically leave all of the land and move all of them to Eretz Yisrael, we would have no haftacha from the Rebbeinu Shalom that he would keep us alive. Das heißt, steht in Svarim, sagt the Satmar Rebbe, the Rebbeinu Shalom wants a part of Klal Yisrael in Golus. And we cannot go against that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Shebachol Meshech Hazman HaGolus Ad Bias HaMashiach Yu Yisrael Mefuzorn B'chol Daled Kanfei Sa'aretz. It is the Rebbeinu Shalom's will that we should be spread out among the four corners of the earth. V'shezevadi Sheyiyah Shetzorech Sheyiyah B'Yisrael of the Hashem. I might have sagt the Satmar Rebbe that there must be Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, and that we have to support them physically, monetarily, spiritually. There must be a presence in Eretz Yisrael. But there must be a presence of Yidden throughout the world until the Rebbeinu Shalom decides to be guileless. And he can't understand how people have been caught up by the Shita, which is of suggesting that everybody should move to Eretz Yisrael, which he holds is Keneged Das Torah and Keneged Chazal Mufurashim. That is Bekitzer Nimratz. That is a condensation of 176 pages of Torah. Rayis Hahinaher. Bottom line. The question is that there are many, thousands and hundreds of thousands of Eden that hold fakert. The Satmar Rebbe is a das yochid bazeh, but we cannot merely dismiss it. There is a Gemara in Ksubis that says shelo yalu b'chayma. What do we do with this Gemara? So Rav Zevin, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, in a kuntrus called Torah Shebal Peh, writes a brief defense of the Shita and shows 4 reasons why shelo yalu b'chayma doesn't apply. The first thing that he quotes is an Avnei Nezer. The Avnei Nezer says in Yerideiah that, what do you want to tell me? There's a shvuah not to go up to Eretz Yisrael. Zocht in Avnei Nezer, there are halachas of a shvuah. In order to make a shvuah, you either have to say the shvuah, or you have to say the shvuah in front of the person, and he has to answer amen. When the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted to make a shvuah with Klal Yisrael, he got them together in Hargrizim and Harevol, and he went ahead and made a shvuah. V'omar kolam, amen. Zochti Avnei Nezer, where was the shvuah? Hishbati eschem b'nois Yushalayim. When did it happen? When was the shvuah? When did we get together and answer and say we're not going to go up to Eretz Yisrael? Zochti Avnei Nezer, that the Gemara doesn't really mean that it's a shvuah. What the Gemara means, and he shows that this is the pshat you see from the Zohar, that the Rebbeinu Shalom made this shvuah on the shirish neshamas of Klal Yisrael. Like the Brisa says in Tanya, that before a neshama comes down to this world, mashbi and I say tehi tzadik v'al tehi rasha. But that shvuah is not a halachic shvuah. It is one of these spiritual, metaphysical things, but in the world of halacha it has no binding force. Because a shvuah, in order to be a shvuah, must be articulated, must be said, and that never happened by this hishbati eschem b'nos Yushalayim. So the Gemara means that there's an inyan, but to tell me that it's halachically asur, not true, because it doesn't have a din of a shvuah. Because to make a shvuah, you need a person to say it or to answer amen, which didn't happen. The Maral. That's answer number 1. Answer number 2. The Maral in the Netzach Yisrael and the Chidushei Agodas and Shas. Says, you know what the shvuah means over here, the lashon shvuah? He says it's like the teichachas in the Torah. We have a Parshas Bechukaisa that's full of a teichacha. We have a Parsha of Kisava, which is a teichacha. Does that mean that there's a mitzvah to have yisurim? All the yisurim that you're going to, Rahman al-Tzlan, eat the flesh of your children, is that a mitzvah that you're mechuyev to keep? It's an azhara. It's a klola. There's no mitzvah to keep a klola. So good, there was a klola on Klal Yisrael that they shouldn't go up in force. But not that it's usher, just like that it's not usher to try to preempt or exempt oneself from the clause of the teichacha. That's answer number 2. Answer number 3 is contained in a letter from none less than Rav Meir Simcha. Rav Meir Simcha, HaKoyin Mitvins, the Baal HaOr Sameach, says that the Shelo Yalu B'Chayma does not apply, or did not apply. Why? Because once there was the Balfour Declaration that the Goyim came to the Heskim that the Jews should have a homeland, then there can be no Shelo Yalu B'Chayma anymore. Why? Because Shelo Yalu B'Chayma means we should not go en masse in force against the Goyim. Here the Goyim were maskim. They said, take your land. Zocht Rav Zevin, the Or Sameach wasn't around in 1948 when you had a post-Balfour Declaration and you had a United States enactment, the United Nations enactment that there should be a Jewish homeland. Zocht Rav Meir Simcha, once the Hashgacha was mesayvev that the Goyim were maskim, that we should have a homeland, there's no Shelo Yalu B'Chayim anymore. Rav Zevin says the Arabs never agreed. He says the Arabs went to Balabatim over Eretz Yisrael. The British were, the Turks were, but not the Arabs. So Mamela, once the Goyim were maskim, away goes Shelo Yalu B'Chayim. Now the Satmar Rebbe bavorns this. And the Satmar Rebbe tries to show that Shelo Yalu B'Chayim applies even if the Goyim aren't maskim. But Azay Zokt are maskim. But Azay Zokt the Rav Meir Simcha. He zokt him first. He writes in a letter that once you had the Balfour Declaration, the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael applied b'taikef. And finally, Rav Zevin suggests his own heter of why there is no Isser of Shelo Yalu B'Chayma. Zokt Rav Zevin, remember there were 3 shvuas. 1, Shelo Yalu B'Chayma. 2, Shelo Yimrutu B'Umas Ha'olam. And 3, what was the 3rd shvuah, Zokt Rav Zevin? That the Goyim should not enslave Klal Yisrael b'yoser midai. Zokt Rav Zevin, this was a 2-way street. This was an agreement. It was an equilibrium. The Rebbe Shalom said, I want you, Klal Yisrael, not to be married in the Goyim, and I don't want you to go up in force. And listen, Goyim, we have to keep this fair. I don't want you to enslave Klal Yisrael b'yoser midai. Zokt Rav Zevin, they didn't keep their side of the deal. These shvuas it was a contractual agreement. You keep your end, I keep my end. If we go ahead and we make a shvuah, both of us, the 2 people, I make a shvuah, I'm going to supply this, and you make a shvuah, you're going to supply that. You go ahead, you break your end, the shvuah isn't chal on me, because I only made the shvuah if you would keep your side of the deal. Once the Goyim, and this they were without any shadow of the doubt, they were mevato, shelo yishtadadu b'Yisrael b'yoser midai. So our responsibilities, machmas, shelo yalu b'chayma, also fell away. And those are some of the halachic reasons of why shelo yalu b'chayma doesn't apply. And therefore the milchama of Hakamas HaMedina was not connected the halacha, and therefore it had a din of milchemes mitzvah, as with the other milchamas that we have had to nebuch fight until now. So, Hayetzi Midvarenu is that once one accepts that there is no problem with Shelo Yalu B'Chayma, if you accept that shita, then Enoch Hinami, all the wars which Klal Yisrael have had to fight until now fit under the category of Ezras Yisrael Miyad Hatzara Ba'aleim, had a halacha of a mechemes mitzvah, which not only were they allowed to fight, but there was a mitzvah asay or a chiyuv deraisa to fight these mechemes and they were halachically Mechames Mitzvah. State in the pasuk, Vayasev Elokim es ha'om derech hamidbar Yam Suf